What's up, everybody? Hello and welcome to Not Your Average Meta, an MTG Commander channel dedicated to bringing you decks and commanders you wouldn't normally find in your average meta. This week's video is brought to you by our new channel sponsor, International MTG. If you're looking for competitive pricing on your favorite MTG cards, old and new, be sure to check out the International MTG store and TCG Player, link in the description of this video. This week on Not Your Average Meta, we have another game filmed down in Taylorville at the Hobby Horse. First up, we have the return of one of the legends of the channel, Foil, playing his new Xanathar Guild Kingpin deck. This deck looks to use Xanathar along with other various creatures in his deck to play cards out of his opponent's decks for his own benefit. Next, we have Justin taking his turn in the cursed top right corner spot, playing one of his rare non-Dimir decks, Ranar the Ever-Watchful. This deck looks to take advantage of exiling his own cards to create an army of flying spirit tokens. Next, we have Gavin returning to defend his winning title with Athreos, God of Passage. This deck looks to play as many Shadowborn Apostles as he can in order to use them for reoccurring value. Lastly, we have Fog playing Hazoret the Fervent. This deck is Fog's own personal spin on a mono-red control chaos deck, where he looks to make random things happen, but in his own controlled environment. Now that we have our fighters, let's step into the Thunderdome and see which deck will come out on top. Fog starts off the game playing a mountain and casts a gamble. He then passes the turn while he looks for a card. Foil plays an Evolving Wild, sacking it to go get a tapped island. Justin plays a Suspended Soul Talisman, then plays an island for turn, tapping it to play a turn 1 Soul Ring. Gavin draws and not to be outdone, plays a Reliquary Tower while Fog randomly discards a card, then plays a Chrome Mox, then taps 2 for an Orzhov Signet before passing. Fog plays another mountain, then taps 2 for Thrill of Possibility, discarding a card and drawing 2. Foil plays a Swamp, then taps an island for Ponder, looking at his top 3 cards, then drawing a card. Justin downtakes his Soul Talisman, then plays another island for turn. He then taps 2 to cast Supreme Phantom and passes. Gavin plays a Fetid Heath for turn, then casts Demonic Tutor and goes to find a card in his library. He then taps 2 to cast an Esper Sentinel and a Shadowborn Apostle. Fog plays another mountain for turn, then helps his boys out by tapping 3 for a Horn of Greed. Foil draws and plays a Dark Water Catacombs, drawing a card. He then taps 3 to play a Moor face down and passes his turn. Justin plays Forsaken City for turn and draws a card. He then taps 4 and casts his commander Ranar. Gavin plays a Lotus Petal for turn, then taps 3 to cast his commander Athreos. Fog plays a mountain for turn and draws a card. Fog then taps 3 for Jessica's Will, targeting Foil and getting 7 red mana. He then uses 5 of it to cast Wandering Archeoc and passes. Foil draws for turn and plays an island, drawing a card. Foil then taps 2 for Brain Maggot, choosing Gavin. Gavin then reveals his hand and Foil exiles Remembrance under his Maggot. He then gives Gavin his hand back and casts Swiftfoot Boots. Justin exiles a card from his hand to untap Forsaken City. He then creates a Spirit Token and draws. He then casts Faithful Mending, not paying for the Archeoc, allowing Fog to copy it, and letting Gavin draw off Sentinel. Each of them both gain 2 life, draw 2 cards, and then discard 2 cards. Gavin plays City of Brass for turn and draws a card. Gavin then casts Dark Ritual and uses his black mana to cast Bolas's Citadel. He then pays 4 to cast Thrumming Stone and another life for City of Brass to cast Shadowborn Apostle. He then ripples for 4, revealing his top 4 cards, hitting another Apostle. Gavin then casts the Apostle for free and repeats this process, hitting 7 more Apostles before stopping. Fog plays a mountain for a turn, drawing a card. He then taps 4 for a Gear per Orrery before playing his second land, drawing another card. Foil plays a Bazooka Bog and exiles Fog's graveyard for some reason and draws a card. He then taps 3 for Hypnotic Spectre and passes. Justin draws for turn, then foretells a card for free, creating a second Spirit Token. He then taps 3 for a Windfall, not paying, allowing Fog to copy it and Gavin to draw a card. The table then discards her hand and draws 6 cards, before discarding their hands a second time and drawing 6 more cards. He then plays a land for turn and draws a card. He then plays a second land and draws another card before tapping out to cast Karmic Guide. He uses the Karmic Guide trigger to bring back Soul Herder back to the battlefield. Gavin draws and plays a Vault of Champions, drawing a card. Gavin then pays a life to cast Shadowborn Apostle off his library, allowing him to ripple forward yet again. He then hits another Apostle, allowing him to continue this process. He then fails to find before playing another Apostle from his hand and rippling forward again. He then hits 3 more Apostles before failing to find. Gavin then pays 1 to sacrifice 6 Apostles to go find a demon from his library. He targets Foil with all 6 Athreos triggers. Foil takes the 18 damage, and Gavin then puts an Archfiend of Despair before sacking 6 more Apostles, this time targeting Fog, who also takes the 18 damage. Gavin then puts out Razakath into play and goes to his instep, where Fog and Foil both lose 18 more life. Before Fog's turn, Foil casts Brainstorm, allowing Fog to copy it, and Gavin to draw a card. Fog and Foil both then draw 3 and put 2 back on top of their libraries. Fog draws for turn and plays a mountain, drawing a card. He then plays a second mountain, drawing another card. Fog then taps 1 for an expedition map and passes. Foil plays a land for turn and draws a card before immediately playing another land, drawing a second card. Foil then casts his own Soul Ring and taps 4 to cast Master Thief, stealing Gavin's Thrumming Stone, putting it into the Apostle Madness. Justin exiles a card from his hand to start his turn, creating a spirit and untapping a city. He then pays 2 to cast Hallowed Respite, to blink his Karmic Guide to get back his Amphin Mutineer, using it to exile Gavin's Archfiend. He then pays the flashback cost, casting Respite again in order to blink the Mutineer and exile Razakath. In response, Gavin activates Razakath 2 times, picking Justin for both Athreos triggers. Justin takes his 6 damage and Gavin goes to find 2 cards. Justin then taps 2 to foretell a card, creating another spirit before going to his instep and blinking the Mutineer a 3rd time with his Herder, exiling Athreos. At the end of his turn, Gavin pays 1 to cast Vampiric Tutor, not paying and letting Fog copy it. They both look for a card to put on top of their libraries and lose 2 life. Gavin draws for turn and plays a Mox Diamond, discarding a card from his hand. He then plays a Prismatic Vista and draws a card. He then casts Songs of the Damned and uses the black mana along with his white mana to cast Edgewalker, 2 more Apostles, his Commander Athreos, and Immortal Servitude for 1, getting all his Apostles back from his graveyard. He then pays 2 for a Talisman of Hierarchy and passes. Fog draws and taps 3 for Crucible of Worlds before playing Glacial Chasm from his graveyard for turn, sacrificing a mountain when it enters. He then draws a card and plays another mountain, drawing another card. Fog then casts Fateful Showdown, targeting Gavin, discarding his hand, dealing 6 damage to Gavin and drawing 6 new cards. Foil draws and plays a land, drawing another card. Foil then taps it up to cast his commander Xanathar, before paying the 1 to equip him with the boots. Justin draws for turn, then goes to combat, swinging his 5 spirit tokens, Karmic Guide, and Soul Herder at Gavin. In response, Gavin casts Teferi's Protection, allowing Fog to copy it, phasing them both out until his next turn. Justin then casts Alrund's Epiphany in order to take an extra turn. He then goes to his instep and blinks a Mutineer to exile Foil's Spectre. Justin then starts his second turn drawing, playing a land, and drawing another card. He then plays a second land and draws again. Justin foretells a card and creates another spirit token. After which, he casts Brago, King Eternal, before going to his instep, blinking his Karmic Guide, and getting back Muldrifter, drawing 2 cards when he enters. Gavin and Fog phase back in, and he draws for turn. He then taps 3 for Bontu's Monument. Gavin then goes to activate his Apostles, but in response, Justin casts Return to Dust, exiling the Monument. Gavin then targets Justin with all the Athreos triggers, and Justin lets him put them back into his hand. Gavin then recasts all the Apostles for free and pays 3 to cast a Necropotence, going to instep, paying 7 life to put 7 cards in his hand. Fog sacks the Chasm to start his turn and draws. He then replays the Glacial Chasm for turn, sacking another mountain and drawing a card. He then plays a Drownyard Temple for turn and draws another card. Fog then plays his own Soul Ring and pays 4 to cast Transmogrify on Athreos. Gavin then puts his commander in the command zone and reveals cards until he hits an Apostle, putting her into play. Fog then taps 4 for Disrupt Decorum, goading all his opponent's creatures for turn. Foil starts his turn and picks Fog for his Xanathar trigger. He then looks at Fog's top card and draws for turn. Foil then plays a land for turn, draws, then plays a second land, drawing again. He then casts Fog's Ruby Medallion and cracks his Terramorphic Expanse to go get another land. Foil then goes to combat and swings all his creatures at Gavin, who block with the 6 of his Apostles. Foil's Brain Maggot then dies, and Gavin gets his Remembrance back. Justin exiles a card to start his turn and creates a Spirit token and untaps his Forsaken City. Justin then draws for turn and casts Charming Prince and chooses to scry 2, putting 1 card on top of his library and 1 on the bottom. He then casts Sages of the Beyond and goes to combat. He swings Brago, Muldrifter, his Bird, and his Salamander at foil, and then swings 5 Spirits, Ranar, Karmic Guide, Soul Herder, and Supreme Phantom at Gavin. In response, Foil casts Reality Shift to exile Brago, but Justin responds to the Dovin's Veto, countering it. Fog then uses his copy of Reality Shift to exile Soul Herder. Gavin then declares no blocks, and in his dying moments, Foil tries to cast Force of Despair, and Justin responds with a Cosmic Intervention. Foil then counters this with a Flusterstorm. Justin then sacks the creatures that came into play this turn, both Brago dealing damage. Justin blinks all his creatures besides his tokens. He then uses his Karmic Guide to bring back his Charming Prince, scrying 2 more. He then draws 2 off his Muldrifter trigger, and finally exiles Wandering Akiak with his Mutineer trigger. Fog sacks his Chasm again, then draws for turn. He then replays the Chasm but sees the writing on the walls and scoops the game up to Justin. This week's big winner was Justin playing Ranar the Ever-Watchful. Ranar is a really fun commander to play with, and Foretell has quickly become one of my favorite Magic mechanics, so the fact he enables a Foretell specific game plan makes him even cooler. The MVP of today's game could have gone to multiple cards, but in the end I decided to go with Karmic Guide. The value Karmic Guide provided in this game, bringing back multiple creatures with strong ETBs for free, is just too good to deny. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you can see more games and decks you wouldn't normally see in your average meta.